What does absolute value do to the graph? So absolute value changes positives to positives and negatives to positives. So what does it do when we apply the absolute value, and what does it look like on the graph? So let's compare the function where we don't have an absolute value applied to the x and where we do have an absolute value applied to x. We've made a table of values here, and let's take a look at the graphs. So in graphing y equals x, really it's just a straight line. We know what this line should look like. It should be a linear equation that goes through 0, and we're going to have this straight line that looks like this. And when we have the absolute value, we take the input, and our outputs are what is affected by the absolute value. So our output of -3 becomes 3, our output of -2 becomes 2, and all our positive outputs just remain positive. So when we graph it, the graph of the absolute value is going to look like this. So -3, +3, -2, +2. So this portion of the graph remains the same, but now the graph is going in this direction. So I'll just draw in the original graph. I'll just draw it in as a kind of a ghost image here. The graph used to go like this. Now this graph has been reflected and it's going like that. And the key point then is this point here, this point where it starts to turn. So it changes right at that point, or the vertex. So what does the absolute value do to the y values that are positive or greater than 0? It does nothing, no effect. However, for the values less than 0, it is going to take positives, so it's going to make negative values and make positive. Or in other words, it's going to reflect the graph. So it's going to reflect the graph across the x-axis, or vertically reflect it. And the key then is this boundary point. Okay, this boundary point here, where it actually changes. The boundary point of the absolute value is going to be when y equals 0. So the boundary point occurs at y equals 0. Okay, where the y values go from positive to negatives, that's when we're going to change from keeping it the same to taking these y values and flipping them across the x-axis.